Welcome to the second Fireside Chat. I got some things to talk about. First thing, this is going to shock people. Duffy and I actually agree on something. Sean Duffy recently put out a video that is calling on airline consumers, people that go to the major airports to go travel, to dress professionally again, to have a little bit of decorum again, to not treat it like it's a city bus, to bring back the professionalism and the formality of flying an airliner. I agree. As somebody who travels quite a bit, I wholeheartedly agree. I think we've lost the plot as a community. I think we've lost the plot as a traveling public, where now flying is just kind of a it happens. It should be expected. I'm deserving of this miracle of flight that we have, and we're showing up in pajamas. I've sat next to people that have taken their shoes off during flights, that have kicked back, put their feet up on the chair in front of them. I think we need to get back. I agree with Duffy. I think we need to get back to a more formal flying setting. I don't even mind dressing up again for flights. If that's what it takes, absolutely, I'm fine with that. Now, here's where I disagree with Duffy. That's not what you should be focusing on, Sean. I get it, that's fine, and maybe you did it for clicks, maybe you did it for views, made that video to try and make yourself relevant again, I don't know. But that's not what you're there for, man. What you're there for is fixing the FAA and fixing the problems that we're experiencing right now in the aviation space, which brings me to point number 2. I have recently been asked this week by a lot of clients, a shocking amount of clients, I don't know what's going on this week, but do I think the FAA is changing? And all the push that we've been doing, right? All the pilots that we represent over the decade that we've represented them in actions against the FAA, with NTSB cases, with regional flight surgeon reviews, with federal air surgeon reviews, with the Court of Appeals in DC, with all the congressionals that we do weekly. Do I think the FAA is changing? No, I don't. And that kills me to say that. That absolutely kills me to say that I think we are still dealing with the same FAA that we were dealing with a decade ago. And why shouldn't we, right? None of the governmental regs, none of the aeromedical regs, none of the FAA modernization initiatives have done anything. We're still dealing with an FAA that was stuck in the 80s. For example, our air traffic controllers are still pushing strips. They're still handwriting down aircraft strips, aircraft information, and passing it to the controller sitting next to them. Taking that strip, putting it up on the strip board, writing, passing it to the next controller. That type of stuff that was happening in Reagan's FAA back in the 80s, in 81, 82, that's still happening today. Our aeromedical regs still reflect medical technology and medical involvement from the 80s. So why would we be dealing with an FAA that's any different? And that absolutely pains me. I cannot tell you how much that frustrates me as an aviation attorney dealing with the FAA, that we're constantly knocking on this wall, we're chipping away, but the wall still stands. And it's the same wall that has stood for decades. It's the same wall that will probably stand for years to come. Now, I am excited to say that we have a lot of good pushes, right? PMHC is pushing the Mental Health and Aviation Act. They're pushing the Medication Transparency Act. They're going to Congress and they're making legislative changes. But what kills me about that is the FAA is still gonna have to acknowledge it. So even when those acts become law, we are still gonna rely on an FAA to look at that law and to put policies, guidelines in place to implement the changes that are required of them by law. Do I have faith that they will do it? No, I don't. I think that we're gonna deal decades afterwards, I think we're going to deal with an FAA that, while they recognize the law, recognize their obligation, recognize what they have to do, they won't put policies, guidelines in place to make that change. The only way that I think this is ever going to change is if the public fully understands what's happening and the public fully gets invested in change, that the public wants their pilots to be safe and treated and medically sound up in front. And they want an air traffic control system that is modernized, that is efficient, that is safe. When the public starts crying for that to their legislators, that's when the legislators are going to do more than just put together a bill and make law. They're going to knock on the FAA's door and say, why isn't this law being recognized? Why aren't these policies being adopted? Why aren't these guidelines being written? That's where the change is going to come from. And really what I mean on the change is clearing house. The FAA is going to be swept clean. We're going to get a whole new roster of FAA employees of FAA decision makers, of FAA leaders that understand the public's need, understand what's being asked of them, and make those changes. But right now, with the FAA that we're dealing with right now, they're not going to change. They're going to stick their head in the sand. So please, the public, be vocal. Demand what you should be demanding. You want safety. You want an efficient FAA. You want efficient air travel. Also that you could dress nicely and not wear pajamas. Just kidding about that part. But you want a safe aerospace system. And with that push, I think that's when we're finally going to get the change that everybody's wanting from the FAA. So if anybody has anything else that they want to talk about by the fire, even though the fire is not on right now on a very snowy and cold day and definitely should be on. If there's anything that you want to talk about, let's talk about it. This is completely off the top, unadulterated, just honest opinions about anything in the aviation space, anything about Ramos law, anything about what we do here. I'm more than happy to answer anything. So join us next time for the next Fireside Chat where we'll talk about whatever comes to mind up here. And hopefully at the next Fireside Chat, we got a working fireplace so I don't have to sit here cold on this slab of material. That's what you can look forward to next time, working fireplace. Tune in to see if it does.